Well, the European Union has called on Turkey to respect the rights of peaceful protesters after Ankara said it had arrested more than 1,000 people since anti-government demonstrations began last week. Tens of thousands of people returned to the streets across Turkey on Sunday in defiance of a ban on rallies. They're angry about the arrest of Ekrem İmamoğlu, the mayor of Istanbul and a key political rival of President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Demonstrators accused the Turkish president of trying to remove a major political opponent ahead of elections in 2028. Mr. İmamoğlu was taken into custody pending trial on corruption charges. With more protests in major cities expected, DW has been hearing from people on the streets of Istanbul.
Justice must be served. It cannot be this way and it cannot continue like this. But we don't know what to do either. Everyone is conflicted right now. They don't know what to do, they don't know how to act. If I go to a protest, it's a crime. But if I don't, it's a problem.
Support for İmamoğlu will increase. Instead of going to prison, he's on the path to the presidency. They put the man who committed no crime in prison. If he had committed a crime, then fine. You know, President Erdogan went to prison for 3 months in 1999. İmamoğlu is on this path right now. We will protest like this. We can do it without breaking things left and right, without harming the security forces by using our democratic rights. Shouting and screaming, breaking things is not the solution either.
Well, our correspondent Dorian Jones is also in Istanbul. Welcome, Dorian. President Erdogan addressed this unrest at a cabinet meeting today. What did he say?
Yes, he came out with a very tough speech after his cabinet meeting, saying that describing the unrest as a movement of violence. He went on again to accuse the protesters of being street terrorists, and then attacked the leader of the opposition, Özgür Özel, for accusing him of inciting and provoking this unrest. He also spent some time on defending the prosecution of the Istanbul mayor, Ekrem İmamoğlu, which triggered all of this unrest, saying it had revealed a conspiracy of treachery and of theft. He then went on to say that it is underlined that the opposition were unfit to hold any power, even a street buffet. So very, very tough rhetoric from the president, and an indication there's going to be no stepping back from the robust approach towards the protesters that's going on as we speak.
OK, so no stepping back from the authorities, but the demonstrators don't seem to be stepping back either. We're up for a 6th consecutive night of demonstrations in Istanbul and elsewhere, despite this government ban. Are they likely to keep going?
Well, that really is the big question. I mean, ever since the unrest started on Wednesday, following the arrest of İmamoğlu, the protests have got larger and larger here in Istanbul. And also they've continued to spread across the country. Over half the country's provinces have ongoing protests. And it is expected to be another wave of protests and violence, as confrontations seem to be almost inevitable between the security forces and the protesters. The key question is, can they sustain this? I think that Erdogan will be banking on the fact that at some point they will start to lose energy, the apathy. Also, he could be eyeing that this weekend is a major religious holiday when people traditionally go away during that break. He could see that as an opportunity for the unrest to start dissipating. And that possibly would be then an opportunity from Erdogan's possible calculations to move in harder on the protests, to try and break them up. For now, at least, in spite these bans that have existed in all of Turkey's major cities, the protests still continue. The question is, how long will the security forces allow this to continue? But for Erdogan, the calculation will be of a further crackdown, risk of further escalation in the protests. A difficult situation the president's in.
And we were looking at live pictures as you were speaking there, Dorian. So we have apparently 2 issues here. We have the apparent politically motivated arrest of Ekrem İmamoğlu and Turkey's handling of the protests because of that arrest. How is this unrest affecting the country's reputation and indeed its economy?
Well, that really is a question that people will be asking. I mean, there has been growing criticism, particularly from the European Union, which has been voicing concern over the handling of the protests, as well as the arrest and imprisonment of Ekrem İmamoğlu. But it has to be said that the influence of the European Union has very little these days, given the fact that Turkey's largely given up on the idea of being a member of Europe, although President Erdogan today said that European Union cannot survive without Turkey. And I think he was looking to the fact that Turkey has the second largest army in NATO, and Europe is increasingly looking to its own resources to defend against the Russian threat. So Erdogan believes he has more leverage over Europe than Europe has over Erdogan. But I think the one Achilles heel, or the one thing that major concern for Erdogan, will be the economy and the financial markets. Ever since the arrest of İmamoğlu, there has been a vast exiting of foreign investors, and the central bank has been forced to spend up to $30 billion defending the currency. How long they can sustain that is a key question, and that will be a concern on Erdogan, and probably a factor that he really will want these protests to come to an end. For the protesters, they see that as an opportunity to put further pressure on Erdogan over the imprisonment of İmamoğlu.
Thank you, Dorian. DW correspondent Dorian Jones in Istanbul.